So this may be a longer rant than usual, but I guarantee you'll find out what happened at the FU sit-in that was forcefully dispersed by the Berlin police. Now, encampment started yesterday, 7th May, in the morning, and people set up everything, and they had very clear demands that you can see on the Instagram of Student Coalition Berlin, and they're all very reasonable, ending complicity with Israel in genocide. Now, the FU presidency, or let's say Ziegler, the head of the FU, already took a decision that he will not be subjected to any kind of student activity, and it earlier called in the police to evict students, which is really a kind of unprecedented. But now he did it again, and this time they wanted to do it swiftly and remove everyone. Now, what people don't understand probably about Ziegler is that he's under a lot of pressure internally to act a certain way, and he's been accused of supporting anti-Semitism. He fought it at first, but he's sort of a weak president that is completely looking out how to stay in his job, and it's proving very difficult. And we could see that the Minister of Higher Education is kind of constantly pushing him to kind of like, oh, well, maybe you should be removed or something like that. So he succumbed and basically, without any principles, invited the police to take over the campus. Now, what happened is, when the police took over, they had to manage the situation. And one of the things they did is one of the most authoritarian trademarks that you find in oppressive regimes, and they cut off the internet from the encampment. There's a Wi-Fi called Free Berlin. Look at the irony of the name. And that was taken away. People couldn't connect to the internet. And the next thing that happened is that police started targeting people who were documenting with their cameras police brutality. So a couple of people with cameras have been targeted. And that in itself is also a sign of an authoritarian regime. And it's kind of like a military takeover. And let's just remember that this is a university, a place where students are learning and trying to do the right thing. So they even closed off the buildings. They, because the encampment was in the middle of the campus, they started, getting people out. And I could overhear some of the policemen talking to each other and saying, this makes no sense. We move them here, they go there. And this is why they started removing everyone from campus. They closed down the building. They even disrupted teaching that was unrelated to the encampment. They halted that. They sounded an alarm and evicted everyone out, including faculty, right? So they asked faculty to leave, and they were also not permitted, a lot of them were not permitted to stay on. I think some of them did. But in any case, a partial closure of teaching, and kind of like everyone was kicked out. Now, what's more striking about this eviction, as people were pushed out, is the police aggression. The police was very aggressive. And, we've seen it before when police arrest people, that they're extremely violent and you're getting in their way, and they use tactics. And now we've seen tactics of policemen elbowing a student or a protester in order to arrest them. That's extremely violent. But what's more important, and I posted about this earlier in a video earlier, is that they were shoving people around very recklessly, to the point where one policeman was just like pushing a woman by the neck. And seriously though, how do people accept that? I think that kind of sums up the situation. It was a tactical operation where people were accused of various things. Now, of course, when the counter-protest, pro-Israel, I don't know what their pro is exactly, like, do they want Israel to kill more people in Rafah? Anyway, they were protected completely by the police. There was nothing happening. They were provoking protesters and no one did anything. And all you have in German media, is that there was anti-Semitism. I would tell people who believe that crap to go out to the protests and see for themselves and document it and then report on it. But most of the time it's just rhetoric. I wonder what happens is you go in there and you're like, how can we spin this to make it anti-Semitic? Anyway, to make a long story short, this aggression and authoritarianism is something that I recognize. very well, and it's very worrying. And I've seen it in Egypt happening, and I see some of the same tactics, the very repressive tactics. Now, the Germans are like, oh, this is really bad, but can you imagine the scale of this? That an Egyptian thinks it's a really, really authoritarian move, how they've handled the student protests. It's ridiculous, and it's really insulting, I think, to all Germans. So that's it for now. Bis bald.